which is full of young people, but they do not know what to do in life. They're just getting carried away with the social media wave, TikTok dances and the addiction stuff, but they're lost. They're kind of depressed because the school system is not that good. The prices of things are going up, but you know that they are good people and they have a lot of talent. They mean something to you and they value you. So, as a mentor, how would you guide these young people out of the disruption which is going on around the world right now? So, Dan, it feels so good to do this with you again. It's been such a long
Yeah.
time since we were like recording, and a
Well,
lot of
it's
things have changed since the time we
mhm,
have done it. So, what's your feeling
yeah.
about it?
Well, first, it's great to see you again.
Same here.
Um, and what do I think about how things have changed? Um, you know, change is inevitable. Change is always going to happen, and the one of the few constants in life is change.
Yep.
So, I think we have to accept change and adapt to the requirements of the change and
Hmm.
not worry too much about the change itself. It's going to come, whether we like it or not.
Well, that's a good thing to start off with. So, that's a like great thought to start off with, and I think people would love this perspective, to be honest. And to be honest, I'm also like kind of nervous because I'm doing it after a long time. So I don't
Hmm.
know, like let's see how it turns out. So there's been a lot of changes since we made that podcast. Uh,
Hmm.
for our viewers, I'll say that if you want to check it out, I'll give the links in the description. And Daniel also has his own website and book, and I'll also give the links to the book and his website as well, so that you can go and check his work out. So, so apart from that, there has been a lot of changes I've noticed since we have made that podcast, and one of the major changes is COVID is still there, but it has gone down a little bit, I guess. But
Hmm.
some of the
Hmm.
things have never been the same.
Hmm.
And the other things are like Russia-Ukraine war, which
Hmm.
has caused havoc around the world, I would say,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
Russia is a great supplier of like natural gas, if I'm not wrong, and
Hmm.
Europe
Yes,
is
well.
a great importer of natural gas, and so that
Hmm.
has caused disruptions. And natural gas, there are some things
Hmm.
which are like a basic commodity, like
Hmm.
oil, gas,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
basic types of food. So if there's a disruption in
Hmm.
the food chain or in the chain
Hmm.
of those things, then
Hmm.
the prices go up and it has a massive impact. So
Right,
I
right.
have seen like in previous news that during the winter times people were struggling to
Yep.
keep themselves up warm because the gas prices are too high. And I've seen
Hmm.
long lines of like cars and vehicles in the gas stations
Hmm.
because people are not there are not enough gas. And so like this has caused a huge tension around like European region and the Western world. And
Hmm.
because gas is a basic product, and it has caused like the since it is a basic product, so it has an impact on the prices of other products as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you understand basic economics, you will understand that. And that's
Hmm.
one thing. The other thing I noticed is that technological revolution. So people
Hmm.
used to think that, oh, AI and machines are just for boring jobs that will make human life easier, like robotic hands and whatnot. But
Hmm.
recently we have seen the advancement of like digital art. Especially,
Hmm.
I have to mention about that. Then I'll have to mention about ChatGPT and DALL-E 2.
Hmm.
Those are from OpenAI, and so
Hmm.
that caused a havoc in the artist society because people are like, "Wow, you are stealing our work.
Hmm.
How will we do our jobs?" Because some of the arts the AI is producing is more creative than the arts, I guess, from the actual artist, if I'm not wrong, because the AI has the access to the whole internet, right? They
Hmm.
have the uh, data from like the ancient artists to modern artists, so they can analyze the data and come up with its own version of art. So that
Hmm.
has caused a lot of change. And I can say same thing goes for NFTs. People were selling NFTs, like digital art in NFTs,
Hmm.
and like they
Hmm.
were making lots and lots of money. Same goes with Bitcoin. Like people were Bitcoin's price were like going through the roof. So
Hmm.
there, and even if right now, if I'm not wrong, I know I'm not wrong, but in this case, there are lots and lots of businesses that are standing up starting regard around these technologies. So there's a huge change
Hmm.
in like what's happening around us. I would say that. And I think USA, China, Japan, and Russia, especially USA, is like at the pioneer of the
Hmm.
changes in the technological world. And
Hmm.
OpenAI is founded by Elon Musk and Sam Altman. I think they're also Americans.
Hmm.
And traditionally, you have seen the technological changes come from US, like YouTube,
Hmm.
Facebook, Google, Amazon,
Hmm.
Microsoft. They're all US
Hmm.
based companies.
Hmm.
And so, given that this is the situation, which is not that stable, and on the other hand, let's say you are a mentor of a team which is full
Hmm.
of young people, but they do
Hmm.
not know what to do in life.
Hmm.
They're just getting carried away with the social media wave, like TikTok
Hmm.
dances and the addiction stuff. But you
Hmm.
know that they are good people and they have a lot of talent, but they're
Hmm.
lost. They're kind of depressed because the school system is not that good. They're like the prices of things are going up and they're kind of lost, but they mean something to you and they
Hmm.
value you. So as a mentor, how would you
Hmm.
guide these young people out of this the disruption which is going on around the world right now?
Boy, you don't ask me simple questions, do you? Ask me something simple. Wow. Um, so, a couple of initial thoughts
Mm,
in no particular order. Um, First of all, I think one of the most exciting things. So, um, first of all, you ask really good questions. um, so I do believe that one of the most exciting things in the world right now is that we have so many younger people, and I would use that define younger people in terms of 40 or less or younger. I have a son who just turned 31, so he's right in the middle of that sort of
mm,
younger range. And I can't think of anything that's more exciting than smart, well educated, passionate young men and women coming into the workplace
mm,
to figure out and help solve some of the problems in the world that we're facing right now.
mm,
um, and I would put yourself in that category. Um, I just think that's an exciting thing is to have people like yourself who are passionate about using the tools and the skills that they have that's available to them to change the world. So, my job, if you were part of my team
mm,
and I was the leader of your team, my job would be to help um, mentor you,
mm,
but also to help you understand and help give you the self confidence
mm,
that you do have a voice that's worth hearing, um, and to create the kind of work environment where you feel that you can contribute, um, both to the larger organization and to the team. So let's say I was the leader and you were part of a team. We had 20 people on the team.
mm,
Um, I think one of my challenges would be to mentor you and everybody else on the team and to help you understand that your voice is not only valued and worthwhile, but it is vital to making our team successful,
mm,
to achieving our goals, and that would mean being extremely collaborative in how we approach whatever it is our team is trying to do.
Hmm.
So it's not me dictating to you what to do, it's let me get underneath you and support you
Okay.
so that we can um, we can achieve our goals. And that's a very different kind of leadership than
Hmm.
what we saw even 25, 30 years ago. Um, Leadership in the industrial age was very top
Hmm.
down,
Yep.
which was probably appropriate because in the industrial economy, the people at the top of the organization, they were the ones who were well educated.
Hmm.
And the people in the bottom of the organization, they were the least educated. Um,
Hmm.
Now we have a situation in the knowledge age where that's often reversed, where the people at the top of the organization they are less well educated than people who are just coming into the organization. So I think that means we need to reverse some of those historical roles of leaders, where leaders,
Hmm.
instead of being the director telling you what to do, I become more of a support to you as we have established our goals. This is what we're trying to do. Now I become your mentor, your support. I am supporting you as opposed to telling you what to do.
Hmm. But how would you build that system? Let's say you are someone older. Let's say you are in your mid 30s, and the
Mm-hmm,
people you have are like 17 or 18-year olds, and they are not they do not have a good lifestyle. They do not
mm-hmm,
have a good choice of content that they're watching or doing.
mm-hmm,
And let's say they're addicted to social media and some bad stuff on the internet,
mm-hmm,
and you know that you have a great bunch of team, and
mm-hmm,
they have shown like a little bit of spark here and there through their
mm-hmm,
work, but
mm-hmm.
they're not connected to their self development, their self
Yeah,
growth. They're not connected
yeah,
to that. It's because these days you have so much of entertainment at the tip of your fingers that it's very easy to get lost.
mm-hmm,
And for
mm-hmm.
young people, especially the young people who are not equipped with the tools that are necessary to
Yeah,
use these powerful things
mm-hmm,
in a very constructive way, in a way that it will help them to develop themselves.
yeah,
So
yeah,
how would you build that support system which you're talking about? How would you connect with them, given that you have
yeah,
the age gap? Again, given
yeah,
that they're not connected with the real world scenario, like what's
yeah, yeah,
happening.
yeah. Well, if they're 17 or 18 years old, my first reaction was, I'm not their employer, I'm their parent. So they still, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, they still need parenting.
Yep.
So, at that point, my role becomes even more different and probably more challenging for me.
Hmm.
Um, and so, one thing that I would just add this anyway.
Hmm.
Um, but one of the things that we know from organizations that produce high levels of employee engagement,
Hmm.
high levels of customer value, is that they recognize that their employees are whole human beings.
Hmm.
Yes, they're bringing their brains to work. They're bringing their hands to work. They're doing, they have technical functions to perform at work.
Hmm.
But beyond that, they're still human beings. And the more I can help them grow and mature as a human being,
Hmm.
the more value I can add to them, and that value sooner or later is going to get transferred to my customers.
Yep.
So let me just by way of example, if I, as your mentor or your leader, if I can help you become a more self-confident human being,
Hmm.
then that's going to make you more valuable to me, and that value ultimately at some level is going to be transferred to my customers.
How
So
would
it's
you help me become the self-confident human being? Whether will you follow any process, or like what's the steps or the secret?
Yeah, again, you're asking a terrific question. So I would answer it in two parts. Um, one is that, well, actually, three parts. One is that I need to model um, human growth.
Hmm.
That as a human being, I am still growing, I'm still maturing, I'm still developing. And even as someone who's probably old enough to be your grandfather, I still need to model that.
Hmm.
And which is why a year ago, I'll show you, I started a program called called Effective Leadership Development. I graduated, and here's my certificate.
Oh,
And I finished the program in July or August, actually. I was part of a team. We're going through this material,
okay.
and it was terrific. I loved every minute of it. But so as your leader, I need to be modeling that kind of behavior. That
Hmm.
I am still in the growth phase. I'm still maturing as a human being. So that would be my first thought. The second thought is that on a very practical level, I would want to meet with you individually, probably at least no less than once a week,
Hmm.
where you and I would just have a conversation that's maybe 10 minutes long,
Hmm.
and we don't talk about business. We talk about what's going on in your life,
Hmm.
and as we get to know each other better, you're going to say, "Well, my grandmother is living with us, and she has dementia, and that puts stress on my life,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to offer any solutions, but I need to understand you as a human being."
True.
So that would be a very practical thing, and I see that in leaders and organizations that are working a lot with younger people, um, and that are providing a terrific cultural experience for their employees. The leaders are trained to do a regular check in with their employees. And that is the same whether it's in person or virtual. They have a regular
Hmm.
time for check in. How are you doing? What's going on in your life? How can I support you? And ultimately, I want to be pushing you to um, think about your own growth and development as a human being.
Hmm.
So, third part to my response would be, this is something I've seen a number of organizations do. Um, I don't know if it's the same way in Bangladesh, but in fact, I'll ask you, what activity can human beings engage in that scares the daylights out of them?
Can you explain like
There,
what do you mean by scaring the daylight out of them? Like,
well, there's the scariest, the most frightening activity for human beings is this one thing. What do you think that one thing is?
well, in terms of like corporate level, I haven't like done any corporate jobs yet, so I'm not so sure about it. But I would say that for I think it matters, like it differs from different like people to people.
Hmm.
But if I like, let's say start from the basic ground level work, I would
Hmm.
say the increasing price of basic commodities and like living costs, increasing living costs. Like let's say if
Okay.
the onion price increases, or let's
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
the gas or fuel price increases, you would get that news um, in the television, and it will be especially harder for poor people or middle class people to
Mhm.
lead their life. So I guess that would
Okay.
be one of the factors.
Okay. Well, that's true. That would cause a lot of people concern.
Yes.
For some people, it might be frightening, but the studies show that the one activity that human beings can engage in that is more frightening than anything is public speaking.
Oh, that is a common
Now,
thing. That is a very common thing. Like,
uh
let's say that when teachers like ask an introvert to stand up and introduce themselves, that's like one of their like
yep,
most frightening things. And
right,
when you
right,
have to give a speech or a presentation, then oh my God, people sometimes stumble in between. They
yep, yep,
freeze, they lose
right,
what they're supposed to say and whatnot,
mm-hmm,
because you're suddenly
mm-hmm,
like facing a lot of people. They take
mm-hmm,
a lot of preparation and whatnot, even though that the presentation is like
right,
5 marks or so. Even though like five
right,
marks is a little
right,
valuable,
right,
or
right,
very
right, right.
valuable. So yeah, that's a very
So,
common thing.
so if I am your manager, your leader,
Mm,
and I want to help you and my team develop more self-confidence,
mm,
one way of doing that is to encourage, motivate, even require people to do some kind of public speaking.
mm,
Now, that could be something as simple as Monday morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to have a staff meeting, and
mm,
you are going to be in charge of the staff meeting. You run it. Um, that could also be okay, we have a presentation to make to the executive leadership team next week.
mm,
Um, you're going to make it. You're going to make the presentation. Um, but we don't just want to take you and sort of throw you in the swimming pool without a life jacket, but
mm,
we also want to be able to provide a safety net, because public speaking does, is a very frightening thing. So we want to do that in an atmosphere of safety. We don't want to scold and ridicule. We don't want to make fun of. Um, but we want to encourage those kinds of activities because we know it builds self confidence.
mm. True. So, in our university, like I'm a business student, so
Hmm.
you'll have to, depending on the course, you'll have to give presentations, you have to prepare
Hmm.
the slides, you have to prepare the research paper
Hmm.
and stuff like that. They'll assign you groups, or you can assign your own groups. So people, what they normally do is
Hmm.
they choose their friends or the
Hmm.
people they have like previous experiences with. So, do you think these frequent presentations help people in developing their skills?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And if you're taking a class at university and you've been assigned a team, let's say there's 5 people on the team,
Hmm,
um, and at the end of the course, someone has to give a public presentation or do some kind of a presentation.
hmm,
Um, uh, out of, let's say, 5 people, there's going to be one person that says, "Yeah, I'll do it. That's easy."
hmm,
And
true.
they're just comfortable in front of a group. But there's going to be 2 or 3 that are going to go, "Yeah, please, you do it because I don't want to do it." Well, they're the ones that should be doing the presentation because it's scary, it's frightening,
Hmm,
it is. We get nervous when we have to stand up in front of a group. But
hmm,
I'll tell you this story. I had just graduated from college, and I discovered a group called Toastmasters. Do you guys have Toastmasters in Bangladesh?
no, I've never heard of that.
It's actually, I know they're international. Um, to what extent I don't know, but they do um, training in public speaking, and it's training by doing. And so
Hmm,
for about, I don't know, maybe a year, um, I was involved in a Toastmasters club, and every night we met once a week, and every night everybody had to give up, they stand up and give some kind of a presentation. Um, the fun ones were when they would say, "Okay, Dan, it's your turn. You have 3 minutes. Here's your topic. Start." And you had to, in 3 minutes, you had to give a presentation on a topic that was
hmm,
handed to you.
hmm,
That creates, and then you're evaluated on it. That when we got done, they said, "Okay, this is what you did well. This is what you need improvement on." So it was kind of hardcore.
hmm,
Um, but what a terrific experience to not only learn the skill of public speaking, but to gain the self confidence. And when you gain that self confidence in that area, you become more self confident in all areas of your life.
True. The confidence gets reflected into other stuff.
Yes.
Because let's say you have a very good presentation and now you'll feel happy, you'll feel motivated, and that's gonna get
Hmm.
reflected onto the other things that you're doing. And I
Exactly.
think I have heard something of like that, but I'm not sure about the name. But I know that there are groups and organizations which help
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
build their public speaking skills and their
Hmm.
confidence in public, in
Yeah.
talking in front of the public. And
Yeah.
I remember that in our I've done one of the courses like that where they give you actual marks based on the topic they give, and you have to like speak about it for 5 minutes.
Hmm.
You have a rough idea from beforehand, like what it might be around, but you will not have the exact idea about what topic you're gonna get. So they
Yeah.
like you just pick up a random paper, and in that
Hmm.
paper they have just written the topic, and now you have to like make it up and
Yeah.
just speak it in front of the class. So
Hmm.
I think I got reminded of that activity when you're talking about the Toastmaster thing. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one thing I remember the most vividly was, and this is a long time ago. We were in the town I live in. We were just building a big, huge sports stadium,
Hmm,
and and this is actually it happened.
hmm,
They said, "Dan, it's your turn." I stood up, and they said, "Here's the situation. You have to explain to us
hmm.
why there are more men's bathrooms in this newly built sports stadium than there are women's. Please start." And I had 3 minutes. so, so, okay, I'm making stuff up. Um, but that it wasn't the point whether I was right or wrong. It was the
Hmm,
point: could I stand up, be given a topic, and start a talk?
hmm,
A 3 minute talk, not a 4 minute talk, a 3 minute talk. And could I be logical and rational and coherent? And at the end, I was evaluated. It wasn't harsh, it wasn't critical. Um, but there was an evaluation process that did not make me feel ashamed.
hmm.
Um, it it was very friendly and kind and safe. But boy, if that doesn't build your self confidence, I don't know what else does. It was really a terrific experience.
I had to go through it a few times to get used to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think people, like especially introverts, have different like modes for different situations. Like if an introvert is a teacher, okay,
Hmm.
now they have to like turn up their public speaking mode, because if they
Yep.
do not do that, then they won't be able to teach. So
Right.
I know people who have different like versions of themselves according to like their different
Hmm.
situations and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But that's the point that I think
mm,
organizations today, and I don't care what kind of organization it is, especially even more so like in technology where there are just more younger people. Um, and again, I'll use the example if I was your mentor, your leader, your manager, and we had a team of 20 people,
mm,
um, I think my job as your manager would be to help you grow and mature because I know that if you become more self confident,
mm,
you're going to become a better employee.
mm,
You're going to do a better job taking care of customers. You're not going to be standing around waiting to be told what to do because you're too afraid to take some initiative.
mm,
Um, you 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 might take the initiative. You might be wrong, but you took the initiative because you thought you could solve the problem, and that ultimately is a good thing.
mm,
Um, Now, if your solution was wrong, then we have something else to talk about. But I would want to make sure that I nurture that self confidence, that ability to take initiative, to take a risk, and to even support you in that. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, just give you a real simple example. I saw this in one of the organizations that I profile in my book. It's a hospital, actually locally to where I'm at,
Hmm.
and they recognize that one of the keys to their ability to deliver value to their patients. And this we're talking about a big hospital, 5,000 employees, 400 bed hospital, big
Hmm.
hospital, urban center hospital.
Hmm.
Um, Top of the line technology, outstanding caregivers, but they realized some time ago that a self confident nurse, a self confident medical technician, even a self confident physician,
Hmm.
um, was better than one who was not self confident, because someone who was self confident would speak up if they saw
Hmm.
a problem.
True.
They would speak up. A self confident nurse would tell the doctor, "Doctor, you're operating on the wrong side of the brain." Okay, and we laugh
Hmm.
at that, but that actually has happened, where surgeons start operating on the wrong side of the brain, and they had to be told, "No, it's over here." Um,
Hmm.
but a self confident nurse will point that out. And so this hospital, recognizing that, um, they they actually require they have a program. You and I would probably recognize it as Lean or the
Yeah.
Toyota Production System,
Yes.
where everybody is trained in how to do a Kaizen or a Lean. Be involved with Lean,
Hmm.
and every Lean process improvement team has to make a public presentation.
Hmm.
It's a requirement. And I was able to sit in on one of these presentations. Actually, there was 5 of them.
Hmm.
The rule is the person who has the lowest rank on the team. So it's not
Hmm.
the leader or the manager. The person or persons who are the lower level people on the team, they have to do the presentation, and it's public. It's in an auditorium that'll seat 125 people. Plus, it's being live streamed to all of the various people within the hospital.
Hmm.
And so the afternoon that I was watching this happen, and I watched it happen 5 times. Um, at the very end, the chief medical officer of the hospital stood up, and the first thing he said was, "I want to thank," and he thanked this woman by name. Don't remember the name. He said, "I want to thank, this person. This was her first time giving one of these reports, and these take
Hmm.
courage. And I want to recognize you for the courage to stand up here in front of your peers to give this presentation. You did an outstanding job."
Hmm.
And then he had a debrief of all of the presentations. What did people learn? And then at the very end, he did exactly the same thing again. He said, "I again want to acknowledge this person,
Hmm.
recognized her by name." He said, "Thank you for accepting the challenge to give one of these reports." And he didn't do that because he was nice.
Hmm.
He did that because he was trained how to do that. That was part of the process. And I happened to look back at this woman as he was giving her this compliment, and I mean, you could just she was radiating. You could just
Hmm.
tell that she was very pleased. Um, but to expect our staff, our employees to grow in those kinds of ways, again, if we can create a more self-confident human being, we create a better employee, someone who's going to do a better job taking care of our customers, and that value just gets extended on to our stakeholders.
Hmm. It's a very good point you have made, because the even the top individuals can sometimes be wrong, and you need to have that environment where you can constructively like go to them and say
Yep.
that, okay, I think you can do this better. and then
Yep.
you can have a constructive discussion. And
Yep.
I kind of relate. I can relate my second question with this. I made a like a basic structure of questions, and
Hmm.
to be honest, a few days ago I had a management course, and after I finished the course, I went back to your podcast that we made a few years ago, and a lot of
Hmm.
things that you said like made a lot more sense to me because I like now I know some kind of basics about management and the theories,
Hmm.
and my teacher also preached something similar to what you say, and he tried his best to like make a collaborative classroom so that
Hmm.
it does not become all about theories and it does not become all about like teaching
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And that is why we still miss the teacher even though like the course is over right now. And
Hmm.
so I was like going through the materials, and I saw this thing about conflict management, right?
Hmm.
So so let's say you have built a team, like they're
Hmm.
self-confident and
Hmm.
they can present their opinions, but
Hmm.
the opinions can be different,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that can cause that can cause a little bit of conflict because
Sure.
you might say that, oh, this, because not two people are same, right? They might have different opinions.
Hmm.
Even
Hmm.
two big doctors might not be the same because
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
are, even though they're reading the same book, the same materials,
Hmm. Hmm.
they can have different perspectives. And in
Sure.
the conflict management theory, they say that in terms of innovation, if the conflict is too low, then you will
Hmm.
have lack of innovation and lack of
Yep.
growth. And
Yep.
if the conflict is too high, then
Yep.
the team will not be able to operate together. And so
Yep.
it's the manager's duty to ensure that a manager, the leader's duty to ensure that the conflict level is at
Hmm.
the optimum level. Like it's not
Yep.
too low and it's
Yep.
not
Yep.
too high.
Right.
So let's say I'm a manager right now, and I want my team to be not too sluggish, but not
Hmm.
too much like opinionated about themselves. Like, oh no,
Hmm.
I am the
Hmm.
only right person here.
Right.
So, like, if I am the manager, how will I like manage that? Because I think it's very tough and like a
Hmm.
sophisticated thing to do. So, what is
Hmm.
your idea or take on that?
Well, another terrific question. Um, it's one thing to talk about collaboration. Yes, we need to collaborate. It's another one to actually create the environment
Hmm,
of collaboration. And you're absolutely right. The research is very clear. Um, Good collaboration does require conflict.
hmm,
It does require people expressing their opinions. It does require people challenging the status quo,
hmm,
challenging assumptions. Um, and the word is really complexity. Now, I'm sure that you and I, you're in Bangladesh, I'm in United Washington State, United States of America. We could have a wonderful conversation in this kind of virtual environment.
hmm,
If we were to be put on a team together, though,
hmm,
working together, um, you and I, because of distance, time, age, cultural norms, we're going to have major parts of the universe that we see differently.
true.
Um, the From the standpoint of a team, what I have seen organizations do is, first of all, they welcome that.
Hmm,
But the second thing they do put some rules. They do place some rules. Um, or let me rephrase that. They do create rules of engagement. Um, the smart teams do that together.
hmm,
So, for example, one of the organizations I profile in my book is an elementary school. One of the first things that this new principal did was she got her entire team together, which included all of the teachers, the faculty, even the janitors and the custodians,
hmm,
brought them all together and said, what, and this principal was coming into this school after the prior principal had just created chaos. And the first thing they did was and they literally identified every rule that they had even rules that should have been rules but weren't. Things like they had an unwritten rule that it was okay to be disrespectful and rude to their colleagues because everybody was rude and disrespectful. So obviously there had to be a rule that said that was okay. And so they got all of these various rules on posters up on a wall. And then when they got done, she said, okay, now let's rewrite our own rules. And so they wrote rules about how they were going to treat each other, how they were going to interact.
Mm.
And she identified some behaviors that were acceptable, and behaviors that were not.
Mm.
And she put those into a team charter, and everybody had to sign the charter because everybody was involved with it.
Mm.
So when someone decided that it was okay for them to speak rudely and disrespectfully to a colleague, all she had to do was bring them in and say, now listen, that behavior is unacceptable
Mm.
because this is what we as a team decided was important to us.
Mm.
Now, do you want to continue to be part of the team, or would you rather to take yourself off of the team? Well, it didn't take more than one or two of those conversations to realize, hey, these rules and behaviors are important. That school went
Mm.
from the lowest performing school in a district of 25,000 students to the highest performing school in 5 years. So that would be one of the first things I would look to do would be, let's identify the rules.
Mm.
It's okay to be candid. It's okay to disagree, but we can do it in a spirit of respect. Um,
Mm.
you might be familiar with a company called Pixar. It's
Yes.
actually part of Disney Studios. They
Yes.
make these movies that are animated Pixar movies.
Mm.
One of the most creative organizations on the planet.
Mm.
Um, they have a core value of candor.
Mm.
They value candor. Speak your mind, but do it in an atmosphere of love and respect.
Mm.
And so we'll be honest with each other, but and we'll collaborate, but we must be respectful to each other's opinions and where they come from and their lifestyles, etc. Um, so that if I was in charge of a team and we had people from all over the globe, different perspectives, um, I think we want to welcome that,
Mm.
but we still need to express our opinions in an atmosphere of respect and trust and validating other people's perspectives and opinion.
Mm. You have made a great point, and to be honest, I need some time to like reflect on that because
There's
you've been.
actually there's actually an
Mm.
official name for that. It's called psychological safety. Um, and there's a couple of
Oh.
books written on the topic. It's just the idea that um, we all do better in life if we feel psychologically and in some cases physically, but in a professional setting, if we feel psychologically safe to express our thoughts and our opinions.
Hmm.
And concerning innovation, you're absolutely right. The most innovative organizations do not rely on the light bulb moment of the individual getting a flash of brilliance. They recognize innovation happens in little pieces and little parts.
Hmm.
It's the proverbial two or three people meet at the water cooler. I don't know if you have water coolers in Bangladesh, but our office is here. We often have a water cooler. Two or three people meet at the water cooler, and they're just talking. That conversation will trigger an idea.
Hmm.
Someone will take that idea back to their desk, and then they'll meet somebody else, and they'll try the idea out, and it will expand, and collaboration will happen. That's the basis of innovation.
Hmm. like you need to meet with people and you'll have to gain experiences, and that is how, when you get a lot of more exposure, that is how
Hmm.
you have more ideas, and you can actually know that what's the probability of this idea to be working out. And
Right.
this question just came up in my mind right now, and that question is something like, people, what they do before starting a business is they get into a job of a
Hmm.
business where of a type of business, like into a business that they might want to have. Like, let's say, I want to have a computer business, so I start to work with Dell or Microsoft
Hmm.
to know more about computer insights. Or
Hmm.
people, like, when they're working in the company, they get this light bulb idea. Oh, I know this about my company. I can do this better than what they're already doing, since I already
Hmm.
know their weaknesses. And
Hmm.
so I
Hmm.
have heard that what people do is they quit the job, they quit the
Hmm.
company, and now they
Hmm.
have that all the wealth of experience and
Hmm.
probably some capital from the salary they uh,
Hmm.
got through the company, and also the trade
Hmm.
secrets of the company. And so
Hmm.
what they
Hmm.
do is they start up their own business, and
Hmm.
soon the business becomes the competitor of
Hmm.
the original business they
Hmm.
used to work on, because now
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
owner of the new business have a lot of experience, have a lot
Hmm.
of like the sixth sense or the
Hmm.
sense business intuitions which you need to operate a
Hmm.
business. Or what
Hmm.
something also happens is that I have heard this thing about headhunting. And
Hmm.
so what the competitors do is they target the key people, like the top performing people, through
Hmm.
very subtle ways. Like, let's say,
Hmm.
I might be wrong, but they might
Hmm.
invite them through for like a coffee chat or something, and
Hmm.
they might offer them like a bigger salary and bigger benefits. So
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
the person changes the company, not only they change the company, but they also like take the trade secrets of the
Hmm.
company with
Hmm.
to the new company,
Right.
and that
Right.
helps them. That gives the competitor the better edge, and
Yeah.
it also increases the turnover rate. So,
Hmm.
uh, as a manager, let's say if you're a manager of the HR, how do you prevent that to have from happening? Because it can be like a really destructive thing, because your trade
Yep.
secrets are going out, and it's
Yep.
going out to your competitors, right? They can
Yep.
take the
Yep.
market share, they can take your customers,
Yep.
and
Yep.
most
Yep.
importantly, they will know your weakness, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, how do you prevent that? What
Well,
strategy?
yeah, that happens. That happens all the time, and it will continue to happen. I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to stop that. Now, in the states, especially in technology firms, even the last two consulting firms I worked for, um, part of the agreement of employment is you sign what's called a non-compete clause, which basically says you cannot take our secrets and go out and start a business to do the same thing. Um, and if it's in technology, it's very clear. You don't, it's the company. If you come up with some new technology working for a company, that technology is owned by your company. You don't own it.
Hmm.
And so if you leave the company and then start a business that's using that same technology, they can come after you in court and put you out of business.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean it's going to stop it. But the broader question really is this, at least in my mind, is um, how do you develop the kind of culture, organizational culture,
Hmm.
where people don't want to leave?
Hmm.
Um, you're never going to stop someone who is just wired mentally to be an entrepreneur and wants to go out and start their own business. You're never going to stop that entirely.
Hmm.
But we know that those organizations that have strong, dynamic, human focused cultures we know that they attract and will retain the top 20% of any talent pool. They
Hmm.
will attract and retain the best and the brightest. Um, Not 100% of the time, but they will retain, the data says the top 20% of any given talent pool. So it's not so much how do we keep people from leaving, or
Hmm.
excuse me, how do we keep technology secrets from walking out the door? It's really how do we develop the kind of culture where people come here and they want to stay.
Hmm.
Um, Most HR organizations will say you do that through salary and benefits,
Hmm.
and occasionally a few perks like we'll give you an extra day off. But the research is really clear that what creates that dynamic culture is the relationship between the worker and their manager.
Hmm.
There's an old saying, people don't leave companies, they leave their manager. And so I think the real challenge is training managers not to be individuals working in their individual space, but to be thinking about management and leadership as an organizational system, a system that will provide employees with a daily work experience that is motivating, that is encouraging, that allows them to express themselves, allows them to participate. Um, I mentioned the elementary school teacher who brought in her entire team to
Hmm.
write the rules and the behaviors of how everybody was going to relate with one another. Um, that is a great example of how to build a culture so that everybody understands the rules of engagement. Um, Everybody understands what is expected, and the fact that she gave the opportunity of everybody to participate.
Hmm.
One of the things that I absolutely believe in after 25 years in the consulting business,
Hmm.
I absolutely fundamentally believe this, that people will sacrifice their personal time and talent and give it away for the opportunity of contributing to making their organization successful. I absolutely believe that. Um, and There's a guy at a university in University of Michigan, I think. He's one of the world's leaders in HR. Um, I like what he says. He said the greatest gift that an employer can give to their employees is a organization that wins in the marketplace. And that really
Hmm.
begins with um, giving people the opportunity to have a voice and to contribute. I
Hmm.
have never, maybe one or two exceptions out of working with, several hundred different organizations and probably thousands of individual workers. I haven't yet met one who did not care about the organization, whether they did well or not. And if they didn't
Hmm.
care, it was because the organization had done a pretty good job of offending them. So that
Hmm.
I think that's the real key: creating those kinds of organizational cultures where people don't want to leave.
Hmm. And I do agree with you, to be honest. And it reminds me of a story that our management teacher told us. And in fact, he opened up YouTube and he showed a video. And the video was about a company. I forgot the company's name, but what they did for their owner was like pretty delightful, to be honest. So this company had a very young owner,
Mm-hmm.
and his dream was to buy a Tesla. So
Okay,
and Teslas are, a little bit expensive.
a little
So
expensive. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he was like saving up for it, but
Mm-hmm.
now the company was going through tough times,
Mm-hmm.
and the owner decided that he will not cut the salary, he will not fire people, and he
Mm-hmm.
decided that everything was going to be the same. And he
Mm-hmm.
realized that these people, the employees, are actual people who have their family to feed. And so what he decided is to break his savings and use his last
Mm-hmm.
resources to keep the company afloat. and he did not.
Mhm.
He chose not to fire them. He chose not to reduce the
Mhm.
salary and whatnot.
Mhm.
And the employees, they felt really good about that. And
Mhm.
and what they
Mhm.
did is, when the company, they also were like very cooperative, and they were
Mhm.
working harder than ever during
Yep.
that stage. And so what
Yep.
they did is, everyone contributed to it.
Yep.
Everyone So they brought a Tesla for him secretly,
Yep.
and um, he did not know anything about it. He did not
Mhm.
do. He had no idea about it, and so they bring him like at the door of the office,
Mhm.
and his eyes were closed, I guess, and
Mhm.
they just reveal the Tesla for him, and
Mhm.
like he was so happy to see the car, because he had no idea about it, and
Mhm.
all he
Mhm.
knew was the company was going through financial struggle.
Yep.
he
Yep.
he he tried to keep his employees afloat,
Yep.
and it really felt like a family environment at that moment,
Mhm.
not like a
Mhm.
fake
Mhm.
family, like people say,
Right.
oh, you're part of the family, but
Right.
actually
Right.
no.
Yep.
But that was a really heart touching video, and people, you don't
Y-
see
y-
that in the corporate world usually.
Well, yeah, especially if it's a public corporation. I'll just use the example of Google since they've just gone through this, and there's a lot of news about them in the social media. Google had to lay off like 12,000 people.
Hmm.
Which was not it's not a huge percentage of their workforce. It's a very small percentage of their workforce.
Hmm.
Unless, of course, you're one of the 12,000, then it becomes a big deal.
Hmm.
Um, but the word going around in social media is that they just said, well, let's write an algorithm to figure out who we should lay off.
Hmm.
And people found out that they were laid off when they went to log on to their computer and get into their work, and discovered that they had been locked out.
Hmm.
There was no come in for a conversation. There was no. It was just that they just found out that they were locked out of their internal accounts. Couldn't get in. Oh, I guess I've been laid off. So it's going to be interesting, I think, to see the long term impact of that with Google.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking that their collaboration is going to drop. Their employee engagement is going to drop because now what they've done is they've injected fear into the workplace.
Hmm.
Um, they've employees are going to realize that they're just a number. All they are is a number,
Hmm.
um, and their number can be called at any time, any place. Whether or not they're really quality, whether they're skilled or not, whether or not they're really producing, it's a mathematical algorithm, and boom, if my number is called, I'm gone. It's that simple. So,
Hmm.
what's going to be the long term impact of that? To your point, I know of a guy he has a technology company down in Texas,
Hmm.
and he had done a pretty royal job of building it up, um, and then almost running it into the ground. He
Hmm.
was losing millions of dollars a month. Um, he had to refinance his home. He had to sell his cars, and his company was right on the verge of bankruptcy. And it's kind of a long story of how he came to this, but which I won't bore you with. But he realized that he was at fault,
Hmm.
and he had to lay off. I think it was a third of his staff. Brought them all into an auditorium and said, "I'm really sorry, but um, we have to let you go. You're being laid off." And people got escorted out with all their personal belongings and basically shown the door and said, "Thank you very much, goodbye." But he realized that the fault really laid with him,
Hmm.
and he went. I think it was 9 or 10 months without salary. Um, he got out of his own office. He had to give up. He had to give up some office space. So he had a big plush office. The
Hmm.
proverbial quarter. office in the corner with the big picture windows and an expansive view of the town. He had to give
Mm.
that up, and he took up a desk in the customer service department. But that showed him really the work that was going on, how dedicated his people were, and he began to
Mm.
do something really strange. He began to write them handwritten notes to say thank you. And
That's nice.
he also found out later that his chief financial officer, recognizing that he had stopped taking a salary, his chief
Mm.
financial officer said, "I'm going to do the same." And forego, she went without her own salary, um, and worked for free, just to help the guy out because he was serious. She later got repaid. Um, his sales staff voluntarily gave up their own bonuses to help out. And when they got through it, and began to rebuild and grow again, they were more productive, they
Mm.
were more profitable, they had higher productivity, employee engagement was way, way higher. And right now, they're growing faster than they ever have. But it was because he really designed a culture, um, and allowed people to participate,
Mm.
in creating a dynamic team. And it's really a remarkable turnaround story.
I would love to have him in my show. Can you just like, make a contact with him so that, like
He
say
and his
that
team wrote a yeah he and his team wrote a book called Love as a Business Strategy.
okay.
He's he's hard to get a hold of though, but you'll
Mm.
find him online. Or just look up Love as a Business Strategy, and you'll find his book. It'll take you right to his company.
I think he has a lot of experiences to share, and if he comes on my show, it'll be like, very much useful for my viewers and also for myself. So
Yeah.
that was a like wonderful story. You do not see examples like that these days. The only kind of things I get to hear about, especially private jobs, is how unstable they are
Hmm.
and how frightening it is and how they have to be always on top of their game to
Yep.
be in the company. And
Yep.
you were talking about the layoffs made from Google, and I think there has been another layoff after the Twitter acquisition made by Elon Musk.
Hmm.
And like a lot of people were laid off. They had no clue. Even the CEO of Twitter himself got laid off.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, his logic was those people were not efficient, and the
Hmm.
fact that Twitter is still running without them very well shows that those people were actually not efficient, and so he just
Yeah.
wanted to have a smaller team, and that was his strategy of saving up some money. And since Twitter
Hmm.
was not doing so good financially, he had to save
Hmm.
up money so that he can make Twitter recover. And I think he
Right.
also introduced some of the new revenue systems, like you have to pay $8 for the tick mark sign, and that
Hmm.
was his way of trying to get Twitter back up to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
position it was in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see if it works.
People make fun of the $8 thing, and
Hmm.
he is like a mean personality, even
Hmm.
though he had a lot of business success with his lot of
Hmm.
futuristic ventures.
Yep.
And yeah, he's an interesting personality. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your opinion about him though, like in as a employer and
Yeah.
as a business person?
Yeah. I don't really know anything about him at all, other than what I read.
What did you read
But
about
he's
him?
but he's built like what $3 billion companies.
Hmm.
I mean, he's an interesting guy. Obviously
Yeah.
smart.
I do wonder, like, how does he manage to do that? Because two of his companies, Tesla and SpaceX, they're from different. They're not even like closely related with each other. Tesla
Yep.
is a car company, and SpaceX is a rocket company, and
Yeah.
so you don't get to see individuals like that frequently. And so I was like wondering at the very beginning of this podcast, you said that back in the days. Mm. The hierarchy used to be at the basis of that. The knowledgeable people used to be at the top, and the less knowledgeable people used to be at the bottom. And now, since like the minimum level of education required is graduation, and that also comes after a lot of work and dedication. And so you're saying that sometimes the people who are not so knowledgeable and eligible for the position, they get the higher position. So why do you think that happens? Is it a flaw which we have in our system or something else? What's your opinion on that?
Mm. If I understand your question correctly,
Hmm.
um, it really has to do with power, how we exercise power.
Hmm.
So let me just use if you were part of my team,
Hmm.
I have a lot of power over you. I could fire you tomorrow,
Hmm.
um, and that puts a certain amount of fear in your daily work experience.
Hmm.
Um, and so people who know how to exercise power, they will often rise in an organization. They will rise up in the ranks because they're just better at the exercise of power.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's one thing to consider. But in I think in high performing organizations, um, they recognize that power is not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is.
Hmm.
You can't produce computers or software unless you have the power to make financial decisions, investment decisions, to set your strategy, etc. But it's really the abuse of power that's the problem. And most of us grow up, I don't know why this is, but most of us grow up thinking that power is kind of a zero sum game, meaning if I have 10 units of power, and I give you 1 unit, that means I now only have 9. Um, but the reality is, if I have 10 units of power and I give you 1, I
Hmm.
have just empowered you, but I haven't lost any power. I've just
Hmm.
created more power for us as a team to do better and more work. So if there's 20 people on our team and I have my 10 units of power, I don't lose power by giving some of that away. It's strange physics, but
Hmm.
if I give some of that power to each of my team, I don't lose any power. I gain power. The
Hmm.
team gains power. That's the meaning of empowerment. If I empower you, I don't lose power. But our fear is that I only have a limited supply of power. And if I give you some of it, I'm going to lose some of it. But the reality is, if I give you power, I lose none of my own, but I gain, the team gains more. It's really strange physics, but
Hmm.
that's the way we humans really function.
It's all about the perspective, you know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
how you're seeing it and how the other person is seeing it. And it also depends on, let's say, people often trust people with power, and they do something and
Mm-hmm.
they do something which breaks the trust, and
Mm-hmm.
it keeps the person who gave the power like wounded for a long time, and it makes
Mm-hmm.
them it difficult for them to trust someone else with the power,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and
Yep.
they become more, restrictive about giving their power to someone else. And
Mm-hmm.
it happens in our personal life as well. When you're getting close
Absolutely.
to someone, you're actually giving them the power to
Yep.
have an influence over you, right?
Yep. 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 Yeah, you're
Mm.
absolutely right. But corporately, if I give you power, I don't lose any power. But my fear is that I do lose power. But the reality is, I don't lose any of my power. I actually create more.
Hmm. So,
So,
Um, you've worked with many companies and you've had good and bad experiences, right? So, according to your observation, or according to the top performing, not actually top performing in terms of revenue, but in terms of the work environment and the employee satisfaction level, what are the top practices you have seen within the top companies that have high employee satisfaction?
So I was just thinking about this yesterday,
Hmm.
and I wrote three things down. We've already talked about them, but I'll give you the three, and really in no particular order. So number one, that's not necessarily the most important. It's just the number one on the list. The number one thing is that managers and leaders are um, developers of the whole human being. They're not just trying to develop the technical skills. So
Hmm.
you might be the most brilliant programmer in the world, but if you are not self-confident, um, uh, I'm going to, if I could help you become more self-confident, I'm adding more value to the team. I'm adding more value to the company. I'm ultimately adding value to my customers or
Hmm.
passing that value on. So that's one of the first things that I noticed in my research is high impact companies. They are obsessed about value and developing that value wherever they can find it. And the first place they look is in their employees and
Hmm.
developing the whole human being, not just the technical parts that they pay for. I
Hmm.
mean, think about it. If you were to walk in the door of my office and you're in the office next door to mine and you were a programmer, you wrote code all day long. Um, if I did not appreciate and value the fact that you walk in that door with a brain, with passion, with intelligence, with ideas, with capacity for problem solving, if I didn't recognize that, I would be asking you to leave the most valuable parts of you at the front door. If I said no, I just want that bit that knows how to program. The rest of that stuff, leave it at the door. I would be a fool. Okay?
Hmm.
Because the best parts of you as a human being is not what I pay for. I get that for free. So
Hmm.
that's one thing. Developing the whole person. The second thing um, uh, is as your leader, your manager, I need to resist the temptation to solve problems. If you come to me with a problem and I solve it for you, what have I done to develop your technical skills, your problem solving skills? What have I done to help you become a more self confident human being? I've done
Hmm.
nothing. In fact, if I solve your problem for you, I've probably just reinforced the idea that I am a better and more important human being than you are. So that's the second thing. Don't become everybody's problem solver. Um,
Hmm.
if you're on my team and I bring a problem to you and I solve it for you, that makes me feel good, but it does nothing for you.
Hmm.
The third thing is, and there's different names for it. I've kind of alluded to it already. In healthcare, it's called rounding. So where a leader or a manager regularly gets around to their employees and their staff just to visit, just to say hi, really comes out of the idea that when doctors would go to the hospital to see their patients, it was called rounding, where they would just round the hospital to see their patients.
Hmm.
But it's that same idea. Um, the founder of Honda Motor Corporation, Mr. Honda, I don't remember his first name. Um, he's famous for occasionally going out on the manufacturing floor, putting on a jacket, and sitting next to people as they were assembling cars and talking with them. He said, one point he said, I could learn more in 15 minutes about how we engineered cars by working side by side with somebody on the assembly line than I could in a 2-hour meeting with my engineers. And so it's and the lean in the lean Toyota production system world, we call it a Gimba. Management by walking around. Get out of your office and get out on the floor where your people are working and work with
Mm,
them. And there's various ways of doing that. Again, if you were part of my team and you had the office right next door, um, I would want to go over to I would go to your office, not have you come to mine. I would go to your workplace and just sit down with you for a few minutes. How you doing?
mm,
What's going on? What can I do to help you? Is there anything I could do to support you? Do you have what you need to do your job? I might even ask uh, a really important question, which would be something like this: am I asking you to do anything that makes no sense to you, that doesn't add value to you or our customers? Tell me.
mm,
And after a while, you're going to trust me to say, yeah, you're asking me to do this report every week. I think it's stupid. And if I looked at it, I say, yeah, it adds no value to customers. It adds no value to my employees. It adds no value to our culture. Why are we doing that? And we
mm.
stop doing that. So those are three things. Number one, have the mindset of developing value. Number two, resist the temptation to solve everybody's problem. And three, get out and work side by side with employees.
Can you name some of the companies that you have done this research on, based on which you are giving this result?
Yeah, they're right in my book. I've got them all named. I'll give you one, though. It's not too far from me. It's called Cass Tailored, Kaas.
Mm,
Um, and they design and manufacture custom commercial furniture.
okay.
Um, and they're my best example. You walk into their design studio. You walk into their manufacturing plant, and one of the things you will not see are offices. There are
Mm,
no office. Not even the president of the company has an office. Everybody has a workstation that's on the we're on out on the manufacturing floor, and everybody can see everybody. Um, and in fact, for my book, I interviewed the president of the company, and he said, yeah, he said, I think he said 2006 or seven, he realized that his office took up a lot of space, didn't add value to customers. Um, it was like a 2-lane tunnel through which 6 lanes of daily problems had to get funneled through and prioritized. And he said it slowed up our process of improvement and change and growth. So he
mm,
said, I realized I could solve problems. I could do a better job of reacting to problems as they came up, working side by side with my staff. He has a staff of 200 employees, and he's trained every one of his leaders to do exactly the same thing.
mm. I mean, if you're at the ground level, you actually get to feel the experience that your employees are going through. So it it increases the chances that as a business owner or a manager, you will be empathetic towards them, because now you're actually feeling what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep.
actually aware of the pain and the
Yep.
sufferings and their emotions and that they're
Yep.
going through, and that is
Yep.
highly likely that it'll create a collaborative environment.
Yep.
And if they face any problem in their personal life, and in terms of, as we said about the hospital, right, it will
Mm-hmm.
create that environment where it will create a two-way communication, which
Yes.
will help the manager to improve the company, since it won't be like the traditional kings where the managers and the what do you say, that the officials are only
Mm-hmm.
praising him and let's say,
Mm-hmm.
yo, you're the lord, you're the king, you're the best. And
Mm-hmm.
it'll be like a two-way communication, and the
Mm-hmm.
manager will actually be aware of what areas to improve on, since
Mm-hmm.
now the
Mm-hmm.
employees have the, I don't know, it's like the courage, but the environment where they can be open
Mm-hmm.
and they can have a constructive, for feedback,
Hmm.
for criticism, and that
Hmm.
will, I believe, that will help the company and the
Hmm.
workforce to
Hmm.
prosper even better.
Yep. Yep. Just another example. A friend of mine is the chief medical officer for a very large. It's probably this region's largest trauma center,
Mm,
which means they get emergency people who have medical emergencies. They come in from 5 states, so we're looking at a large geographical footprint.
mm,
And they're trained. They have the technology. They have the staff to handle the most extreme medical emergencies.
mm,
And I asked him one time, um, if you were hiring a manager for your trauma center,
mm,
and he would be classified, um, he would have a national reputation um, for his expertise in medical expertise in dealing with trauma. And I said, if you were to hire a new manager for the trauma center, what would you look for? He said, well, the first thing, he said, I would want someone who understands that when they're looking at an elephant, they're only seeing part of an elephant.
mm,
I said, perfect. Okay. He said, and then now let me tell you a story. And I don't know how the two stories are related, but they were in his mind.
mm,
But he said, and with this, I'm probably going to have to close. But
mm,
he said, a couple of years ago, he said, we got a new chief executive officer for the hospital. He said the prior CEO had her office and her entire executive team on the 12th floor, 1, 2, number 12 floor of a hospital. And the hospital had 12 floors. So it was the top floor. Again, massive views of a beautiful harbor, busy city, downtown, snow capped mountains to the west, snow capped mountains to the east. Gorgeous views. You're going to have an office. You want to have an office
mm,
there. And he said, I'm part of her leadership team. He said, my only communication with the prior CEO was through email. He said, outside of a few meetings, I never spoke with her, and
mm,
she never spoke with me. He says, I'm her chief medical officer of the trauma center, one of the biggest generators of revenue, in the entire organization. He said she moves on, and we get a new CEO. He said the first thing this guy does is move his offices from the 12th floor to right
mm,
behind the admitting station on the first floor
mm,
because he wants to get the pulse of that hospital. He wants to feel the pulse of people coming and going. And he said, my friend said, he wasn't with us too long, and he showed up in the emergency department one day. Comes to my office. He had no agenda. He just wanted to say hi. Do you need
mm,
anything? Is there anything I could help you with? He said the first time he did, I was stunned. He said he does it 2 or 3 times a week. And
mm,
he said, consequently, the level of trust on my team, my the team I manage, he said the level of trust for executive leadership has gone up exponentially. He said, faces have turned into names and relationships.
mm,
Um, and he said, my team trusts implicitly our executive leadership. The only thing that they did different was the CEO comes by, walks through the emergency department a couple of times a week, just saying hello. What do you need? Is there anything I could do to help you? Um, and oh, by the way, thank you so much. Thanks.
mm,
Doesn't require a PhD in organizational leadership to say thank you.
mm.
The simplest thing in the world to do. Say thank you.
When you're talking about the emails, like how the managers just sent an email and did not do anything else, uh, it reminded me of something, and that is like a few days ago for my management course final, I had to actually interview a company executive. Like my team
Mhm.
had to interview a company executive. Are you aware of Nestle?
Of who?
Nestle, a food company.
Oh, sure, 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 sure. Yeah.
So we have Nestle in Bangladesh, and we have
Okay.
two um, interview a Nestle official. And so he
Good.
was mentioning, he also mentioned a similar thing, that he does not like, talking through much so much with email. What he does is, if his if his team member needs something, he goes up to the person, he talks with them directly. And let's say there's an award ceremony and someone wins an award and someone doesn't win an award. So what he
Hmm.
does is he goes up to the person and he consoles him or her, and he tries to show him like why did that person get that award and how can
Hmm.
he improve, or he or she
Hmm.
can improve and get that
Hmm.
award the next time. So
Yeah.
I got kind of reminded of his words when you were talking about like being on the ground level and
Hmm.
actually being able to relate with the employees and being
Hmm.
a part of the team, and not just feeling the
Hmm.
vibe
Hmm.
feeling the
Yep.
vibe and not just being in a AC room and not getting
Right.
anything at all.
Right.
So,
Right.
Dan, as you said, you do not have that much of a time. So, I think if we wanted, we would have like a long and more wonderful conversation. But
Love
I
it.
think thank you for coming to the show and sharing your beautiful experience with myself and my audience. And thank you for connecting with me. Do you have any last words for myself and my audience?
Nope. Thanks for the opportunity of hanging out with you for an hour and a half. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks a lot.
Okay.